And we're okay, welcome everybody. This is the inaugural meeting of the Colorado Orphan Wells Mitigation Enterprise Board. I see everyone is with us. Look forward to having this initial meeting. We will start with a roll call of the board members.
Thank you. Ms. Baca.
Here.
Ms. Mendoza-Cook.
Here.
Ms. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Simmons. Mr. Robbins, you have 5 out of 5 board members present.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating virtually. We'll try to get together in person at some point, but for purposes of today's call, the virtual option was best. To start, we have a kind of a short agenda, but what I wanted to do to start is to establish, actually sort of introduce ourselves to each other. So I'll start and then I'll call upon the others that are in the panel because you don't know everybody. I'm Jeff Robbins. I'm chair of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and I, via statute, am chair and a board member of this enterprise. I'm looking around the room. Mr. Simmons, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christopher Simmons. I am a board member, and as Jeff had said, I think we've all sort of know each other, at least within the board. So great to see everyone.
Great. Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Chairman Robbins. Kim Mendoza-Cook. I am also on the board member representing the oil and gas industry.
Great. Board member Baca? Do we still have Ms. Baca?
Ms. Baca, if you are speaking, we're unable to hear you.
Ms. Baca, you're not able to come across.
Right now, yeah.
Ms. Baca, we're not able to hear. Unfortunately, your internet connection is scrambled and we're not able to really hear you. You sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Okay, let's keep going around the room while Ms. Baca comes back. AAG Davenport, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Kyle Davenport, Assistant Attorney General at the Colorado Attorney General's Office. I'm serving as counsel to the board.
Great. Ms. Murphy?
Thank you, Chair, and hello, fellow board members. My name is Julie Murphy. I'm the director of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and I get to be part of this board because I am the director. I don't get to be handpicked. It's an inheritance, I guess. So
You were voluntold to do this.
I was voluntold and thrilled to, actually, right? Like this has been a great vision and a great opportunity, which hopefully the chair will get into in a little bit.
Great. Ms. Moon?
Thank you, Chair Robbins. Meredith Moon. I'm the finance manager at the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. Andrews?
Well, I'm Dave Andrews, the Orphan Well Program Manager.
Ms. Larson, once again?
My name is Mimi Larson. I'm the Hearings and Regulatory Affairs Manager at the COGCC.
And Ms. Castle?
Hi, I'm Megan Castle, and I'm the Communications Manager at COGCC.
Great. And now we've got Ms. Baca again.
Hi, all. I'm going to try this again. I'm remote, at a conference. I'm a commissioner in Adams County. We're the second largest or the fifth largest county in the state, on track to be the second largest county in the state. Right now, we currently lead the state in orphan wells, so this conversation is very important to my community.
Great. Okay. So those are introductions to ourselves. I wanted to sort of create some introductory remarks about this enterprise board. Again, as I mentioned, welcome. This is the first meeting of the Orphaned Wells Mitigation Enterprise. As way of background, the legislature created this board via SB 22-198, a title that stated concerning measures to address orphaned wells in Colorado, and in connection therewith, creating the Orphaned Wells Mitigation Enterprise. So that statute created this board. For those listening in, this is the first meeting of the Orphan Wells Mitigation Enterprise. We just went around with regard to the enterprise board members. There are 5 of us. We're all here. As mentioned, myself and board member Murphy were appointed via the statute. So our seats, our positions within COGCC allows us to be members of this enterprise. Mr. Simmons, Ms. Cook, and Ms. Baca were appointed by the governor to their respective seats. As mentioned, Ms. Cook is with oil and gas industry experience. Ms. Baca is local government experience, and Mr. Simmons is reclamation experience in the industry. Those 3 were, as noted, appointed by the governor, and the statute will require them to be confirmed by the Senate next year. So you get to look forward to that. The statute tells us the purpose of the Orphan Wells Mitigation Enterprise, and it's the following 4 things: to impose and collect mitigation fees, and I'll talk about that in a second, to funding the plugging, reclaiming, and remediating of orphan wells in the state, ensuring that the cost associated with plugging, reclaiming, and remediating orphan wells are borne by operators in the form of mitigation fees, and most importantly, on an annual basis, determining the amount of mitigation fees. By way of background, historically, Colorado's orphan well program has been funded via the mill levy. That is, money for orphan well work was generated based upon production, so the oil and gas industry funded the COGCC's orphan well program. As many of you are aware, in 2022, the commission undertook the mission change financial assurance rulemaking pursuant to direction from the legislature from SB 19-181. As part of that effort, consensus was reached between our stakeholders in the commission to use a per well fee to be paid annually by oil and gas operators to fund this enterprise, which would in turn fund the commission's orphan well work through the orphan well program. The initial fees were set at $225 per well for operators with an average daily per well production greater than 15 BOE or 22 MCFE for the previous calendar year, and a second fee of $125 was for operators with an average daily well production less than or equal to 15 BOE or 22 MCFE for the previous calendar year. I understand Director Murphy will cover what has been received to date later in this hearing. The first registration fees were due in August of 2022, and the next registration payment will be due in April of 2023, with the idea that April will be the ongoing registration date. Following the Commission's rules and our enabling statute, this enterprise board is charged with evaluating the current fees on an annual basis after hearing from the director regarding the future needs of the Orphan Well Fund and determining whether to adjust the annual mitigation fee. The statutory language in this regard is as follows. At least annually, the enterprise board shall consider whether the amounts of mitigation fees should be increased or reduced based upon current circumstances and reasonably anticipated future expenditures from the fund. The director's Orphan Well report is due each September 1st. Accordingly, this board should meet annually following the orphan well report to hold the aforementioned hearing as to whether to adjust the fee, and if so, to determine and set new fees. If the enterprise decides an adjustment to the fee is necessary, the hearing will be conducted as a rulemaking under the Colorado Administrative Procedures Act. The enterprise board shall cause all funds collected to be transferred to the state treasurer, who shall credit the money to the statutorily created Orphaned Wells Mitigation Enterprise Cash Fund. The director of the commission has statutory authority to request funds from the cash fund for plugging, reclaiming, and remediating orphaned wells within the state of Colorado. What I have not covered, but which will be addressed by Director Murphy and Orphan Well Program Manager Dave Andrews, is the related impact of the federal funding for orphan well work in Colorado. So that is a snapshot of what it is this enterprise board is required to do. What we're going to do next today is hear from Director Murphy, as well as Dave Andrews, who runs the Orphan Well program, in terms of an update on work over the course of the past year and into the future. Director Murphy, or Enterprise Board Member Murphy, although I think I'm calling up on you with your director hat on right now.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I think you're calling upon me with my director hat. I would note it as we roll forward, I would expect Meredith or Miss Moon to be delivering these remarks on behalf of the commission in conjunction with Mr. Andrews. But she started with us, I think, 6 days ago, and I didn't think it was totally fair to spring this on her, although I may be regretting that decision. Anyway, with that, I think, Dave, I would like you to kind of give an overview of the history of COGCC's Orphan Well program. It's been a really dynamic and exciting 6 or 7 years in this space, and this to me is the next iteration of it. And as the chair flagged, and as you'll hear from Dave, we've spent the lion's share of the last 6 or 7 months really focused on funding from the federal government, because the infrastructure IIJA, I can't remember the acronym. I can remember the acronym, but not the actual bill title anymore, provided states with oil and gas activity and an orphan well program $25 million in the initial year, and that's a huge amount of dollars. So with that, Dave, I'll hand it off to you and then look forward to kind of closing out your presentation with a couple more remarks.
Thank you, Director Murphy. Does everyone hear me okay? Again, my name is Dave Andrews. I'm responsible for managing Colorado's Orphan Well program. I joined COGCC 17 years ago, and I've also served in the engineering unit. And I believe we'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So what does our program do? In cases where an oil and gas operator is unwilling or unable to comply with their obligations under the Commission's rules, the OWP plugs wells, decommissions production equipment, abandons flow lines, remediates environmental impacts, and performs final reclamation. Next slide, please. Prior to 1990, COGCC relied on bond claims to perform work. In 1990, the legislature passed House Bill 1232, and the commission held a rulemaking to provide funding for a new oil and gas environmental response fund to be used for mitigating impacts as necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Next slide, please. Colorado's fiscal years run from July 1st through June 30th of the following calendar year. The legislature appropriated funds in the first 6 fiscal years to an environmental response budget line item. Starting in fiscal year 97, a specific line item was dedicated to orphan well work. Total budget appropriations for the first 28 years of the program totaled approximately $5.7 million. In July of 2018, Governor Hickenlooper signed Executive Order D 2018-12, providing direction on goals for the program and annual reporting requirements. Concurrently, the legislature appropriated $5 million per year starting in fiscal year 19. Spending authority was also changed to 2 years, allowing greater flexibility at fiscal year end in June, which is typically a busy time for our field crews. Next slide, please. Executive Order D 2018-12 requires annual reports once per year. The reports provide statistics for work performed and related spending during the fiscal year. They also provide a list of sites needing work and their status at the start of the next fiscal year. A few snips from 3 of the data tables are shown here, along with a link to our reports webpage. Next slide, please. In fiscal year 17, management recognized the need to expand our orphaned well program as we began to accumulate large groups of wells from bond claims. Here you can see that our staffing levels ranged from 5 to 6 full-time employees through fiscal year 22. This year, we doubled our staff count in preparation for new federal grants. Next slide, please. Coinciding with our staff expansion, program spending increased, nearly reaching $5 million in fiscal year 20. Expenditures declined during the pandemic because of limited cash flow from production levy and an unfilled staff vacancy. For fiscal year 22, we increased our program spending again and exceeded $5 million overall, including bond spending. Next slide, please. Federal grants are now available for orphaned well work through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The U.S. Department of Interior recently awarded us $25 million for the initial grant, which is the first of several grants that are expected to fund the program for the next 10 years. DOI gave states 90 days to obligate 90% of the $25 million. In other words, let's see, the effective date of the grant was on October 1st. So that actually gave us 3 months, which would be the end of this month, to obligate those funds. As of 2 weeks ago, we have spent $600,000 of the initial grant, and we have obligated another $16.7 million. Of the $7.6 million that are left, they're in contracts that are being circulated for final signatures. So we expect to be very close to 100% obligated by the end of this month. We will perform initial grant work through summer 2024. We expect DOI to begin the application process for the formula grant sometime in the new year. The formula grant will span a 5-year period following the initial grant. Next slide, please. Our count of wells plugged shows a similar ramp up compared to the other charts for fiscal years 20 and 21. Fiscal year 22 was a new record for the program with nearly 70 wells plugged. Next slide, please. This chart illustrates how our site count, the red columns, relate to our well count, the blue columns. Site closure lags behind plugging because it often takes several growing seasons before sites pass final reclamation. This slide also shows how our backlog increased dramatically as we started fiscal year 23. This is mostly related to a couple of large bond claims in fiscal year 22, adding nearly 300 wells to the program. Next slide, please. Please check out our website. We have a live table of project status data, backlog counters, reports, example projects, and much more. Now I will hand the presentation back over to Director Murphy for closing comments. And Director Murphy, you're muted.
It's me every time, unfortunately. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, board members, for your attentiveness and you're willing to serve. As you can see, this program has grown substantially, especially in the last decade, right? We went from around $100,000 to now $25 million in annual spending in, I think, about a 20-year time period. It's been incredibly exciting work. Dave has been a champion for this issue and building this program, especially since, the 2016-17 time period. Where we were last year about this time is finding ourselves with the federal funding coming down that Dave went through, looking at trying to put together a program of $25 million, and this concurrent conversation with our stakeholders in Colorado of, okay, the federal funding's great, but what are we going to do when it's not there? What else do we want to do? And so that's where COGCC really stepped in and adjusted its financial assurance requirements to hopefully mitigate the risk of orphan wells in the future, and also to start to build a state level fund, which is what the 5 of us are here charged to deal with going forward. I think that there are a couple of important things to keep in mind. A lot of our presentation today, or a lot of Dave's presentation today, didn't address how quickly he has built a team and built a process to be able to encumber $25 million in 6 months. I mean, not really 6 months. He's encumbered it in 3, but we've known since about August that we'd have just a few months to encumber it, and that's an enormous testament. He talked about that work, carrying forward and being completed sometime in 2024. So that's a big picture piece of what is going to be funding our program as we go forward. I think that some of the questions that this board will get to wrestle with are, is the funding that we're collecting at the state level the right amount? And at some point in the future, as we're spending down federal funds, do we need to also draw upon our state funds? I think right now we're incredibly well poised to execute on the federal funding. We're looking forward to seeing what the formula grant provides for Colorado and how that feeds into this overall system, as well as the other grant program opportunities that Dave touched on at a high level. I'm happy to talk anybody through what those really mean in terms of dollars or what we need to do. But I think the big picture takeaway is that Colorado wholly qualifies for them, and we'll be pursuing every federal dollar we can because this is such a wonderful opportunity to solve a problem that none of us want. Again, next year, I also anticipate Meredith being in place to kind of talk through the funding, and then to really kind of close this out with the specifics. Last year, as we were developing the financial assurance rules, the Colorado Oil and Gas Commissioners, who set the initial fee and set the initial cadence for submitting the fee with August 1st of 22 and then April 30th for every year thereafter. The goal was to generate approximately $10 million a year. To date, Colorado or COGCC has collected about $9.4 million through that annual registration fee. I think we expect that the registration that's due on April 30th to bring in a very comparable number. And I think that we are well on our way to achieving the vision of the commission and hopefully the expectations of the stakeholders who set this entire enterprise in motion about 12 months ago. So I think that that's a big picture place. I think right now staff has its hands full with the federal funding, and I think we're doing everything we can to get those funds out the door, to get land back to landowners, to get wells plugged, and to execute on the visions of the IIJA as it relates to orphan well plugging. When staff comes back to you, I anticipate in September. Again, I think Chair Robbins noted that our orphan well program is under a regulatory obligation to report out about spending, progress, and orphan well work remaining to be complete in Colorado as of September 1st of every year. So I think it makes natural sense for this board to reconvene later in September to talk about what that report tells us, to look at the big picture and see where everything's going. At that point in time, staff will be well poised to again talk about what the federal dollars actually mean on the ground. We've been so focused on getting those funds obligated so we don't lose any of the dollars that we've haven't had as much time to look out and across and where we're going. So I guess I'll conclude by saying I think we're in a great place with what we've collected. I expect a similar number to come in a few months. And I think it makes perfect sense to reconvene in late September to kind of further that conversation. And Chair, if I've blurred the lines or overstepped my bounds, it's somewhere between director and a board member, I apologize. And I'm sure Kyle will tell me that I need to get it together next time a little bit better. But that's big picture where we are. It's great. I'm really applaud the work of Dave and his team, and I'm excited to see where we go next.
Great. Thank you for that, Ms. Murphy. So commissioners, at this point, we have an opportunity to ask questions relative to the report. I have kind of an initial question, and then I'll look around the room and see if others have questions. But I think what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Andrews and Ms. Murphy, is the fees that are set by statute and which will remain in place unless adjusted are appropriate for 2023. And you would like us to basically take no action at this point, and then we would get the orphan well report from Mr. Andrews in September, and then have our annual meeting a month or two thereafter and make determinations then under the statute about adjustment of fees up or down. Is that accurate summary?
Chair, I think that is a great summary of staff's view. Again, staff is not in a place right now to request funding from this program because of the focus on spending federal funding. September, maybe that's a little bit different, maybe not, but that would be the time at which we would be in a better position. Staff would be in a better position to come back and make that ask if necessary.
Okay, very good. Looking around the room at my fellow board members, if folks have questions, just perhaps raise your hand and I can recognize you. Board Member Baca. And you can literally just like raise your hand this way, guys, from here on out.
So my question, and I'm so sorry, I know you went through the dates. What is due in April? Do we have something due in April of 2023? Or is that not until 2024?
Thank you, board member. It's April 30th of 2023. So the way the rules at COGCC adopted work is that for all wells operated by an operator as of December 31st of the prior year, the operator has to register them. And so we had a delayed collection date for wells operated in 2021 and go forward. We want to, the way it falls in the budget cycle, having those funds come in April is easier than August.
Other board members with questions? Ms. Cook?
Thank you. Mr. Andrews, this may be premature because, as you said, the focus has been allocating the federal funding, but just as you're started looking at the program and thinking about what we might, after collecting in September of this year and then in April of next year, and then the federal funding, do you have an idea, and again, so you can tell me it's premature, of sort of the program management itself, funding aside, in terms of resources and how many projects you'll be able to work through in any given year as you're looking at resources, your internal resources, and an allocation of resources for us to start thinking about potentially with the funding we have now and what may come in the future, if we can ramp the program, or are there restrictions from the program itself and not necessarily from funding? Do you have an idea of that at this point?
Mr. Andrews?
So I would say, as far as ramping the program, it's certainly possible. With the federal dollars, which are now going towards salary, we have some flexibility in forming new positions, more so than we would with a legislative approval, which, as you might know, takes a few years for that to happen. So I think we are more nimble in that respect, or could be more nimble in that respect moving forward because of the funding mechanism.
Any follow-up, Ms. Cook?
Nope. Thank you.
Any further questions for the panel? Commission or Mr. Simmons, I'm used to being on a commission.
Thanks. I think this question is probably also for Mr. Andrews. I'm wondering here as well, and sort of building off Ms. Cook's question, do you feel that even with the potential of the additions of formula grants next year, that the staffing that you all have created is appropriate, or is that something that may be under consideration with the increase of funds coming in the next round of federal grants?
Mr. Andrews?
Thank you for the question. I think it's, as Director Murphy indicated, we really need to take another look back at the program about, well, next September. Part of that is we've brought on brand new staff and some other staff that were internal to COGCC. And we've got to look at project progress and spending progress over the next several months to make a good call on whether or not we need to staff up any further. Right now, we have a vacant position that we had planned on filling. At this point, we're going to, again, just see how the spending, see how the work flows over the next few months and make a decision on that position. So I kind of see it more as like a fluid process where we're taking a look at our backlog, taking a look at how our resources are, our internal staff resources are doing, and making a decision on staffing up when we need to.
Other questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, board members, this is going to get hard for me. Board members, I think at this point, we have been informed that the statutory fees that are in place will remain in place. We've been informed there's not a need for adjustment. So I don't think we need to take any action at this point. And we would then plan on taking action by hearing the Orphan Well report sometime in late September of 2023. And then after we hear that, the action we will take is whether we believe collectively we should do a rulemaking to adjust by increasing or reducing the fees. AAG Davenport, who is our Attorney General and who I'm calling upon now, provides us legal advice. Does that course of action seem legally sound to you, AAG Davenport?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It does. I think, as has already been discussed, the next round of mitigation fees will be due April 30th, 2023. Then September 2023, there'll be a report again. At that point, this board can make a decision as to whether or not it believes there is a need to adjust the fee. And if it believes that there is a need to adjust the fee, can approve going ahead with a rulemaking to do so. That rulemaking, as you noted, Mr. Chair, in your initial remarks, will be conducted pursuant to the APA's rulemaking procedures.
Okay. Does any board member have any questions with regard to this course of non-action, essentially, at this time? Okay. With that, I would like to call upon Megan Castle, the commission's media relations person, as well as potentially Hannah Hickam, to be able to allow these guys to inform the 28 people or so that are listening in how to find us on the web and to maybe show the website, et cetera. Ms. Castle.
Hi, thank you. So Hannah is pulling up the website, and there are two spots that we want to highlight for you. The first one is in our green bar, and it is called, you can go to the Orphan Wells Enterprise tab, which is selected. That will pull up information here on the enterprise. We'll be populating this with more information as the enterprise has more activity, and also looking for an FAQ, press releases, announcements, next meeting, resources. And then also you can see that the commissioners, if you want to scroll down, Hannah, we have the bios and the photos of all the all the board members for this board will be posted up here. And another thing that you want to make sure you understand is that we also have the Orphan Well program. And so if Hannah scrolls back up, you can find this from the homepage by going to Quick Links, which is doing. And right there is the Orphan Well program. This will have up-to-date information about the program. I think Dave and I went through this, looks like September 22nd, to give new numbers and put up new information. You'll be able to find the annual reports that were discussed, the backlog numbers, any other information, especially contractors and other businesses that are interested in working with the enterprise, or excuse me, with the program, can come here for resources. And any other questions about this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So everybody knows you can come find us, identify us at that website, which is on the COGCC homepage. One thing that I don't know the answer to is if folks wanted to get a hold of board members at any time, we don't know exactly how to accomplish that. You can obviously get a hold of me because I'm a known entity on the COGCC and my email address and phone number are there. I'll look into whether the board members get email addresses, state email addresses or not. I frankly just don't, it just popped up as I was looking at the scrolling of our names and it didn't have any contact information. We will figure that out. And if you get email addresses, board members, we will so let you know. And we will populate the website accordingly. And it may be a yes, it may be a no, I have no clue. If not, if members of the community desire to get in touch with the enterprise board, feel free to reach out to me. And my email address is on the website under chair. So jeff.robbins@state.co.us. So with that, I think we are, oh yeah, there we go. So there you go. Thank you, Hannah, for anticipating my question. With that, I think we have accomplished the limited amount of business before this board today. Does any board member have anything further for anyone?
If I may, sorry,
Go ahead,
Chair.
Director Murphy.
I unmuted. I want to make sure that staff is available to the board as needed. And so you can reach out to me, but probably better to reach out to Dave Andrews directly or Meredith, and we'll make sure to get their information circulated to you.
Great. With that, I think we have accomplished our business of the day. And so I would look for a motion to adjourn from a board member.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. It's really great seeing everybody. I look forward to working with you. I want to thank you for your dedication to the state and this important cause. The governor thanks you as well for stepping up and being a part of this new enterprise with regard to the Orphan Wells Fund. So thanks again. With that, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The Orphan Wells Mitigation Enterprise Board is adjourned. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks all.
Thanks.